Welcome back to The Deep Dive, the show where we dig into your sources, pull out the key insights, and, well, deliver the knowledge you need, tailored just for you. Today, we are jumping into the pretty fierce and, let's be honest, subjective world of video game genre labels. The topic we've pulled from a really fascinating personal account in our source material is, well, it sounds simple, but it's actually quite controversial. When does a game stop being a Souls-like and just become, a high difficulty action game? Sounds like splitting hairs, maybe, but our author draws a really sharp line in the sand here, using the original Hollow Knight and its sequel, the much anticipated Hollow Knight, Silksong, as the big case study.
That's right. And our job today is basically to unpack this person's extremely specific criteria. What's really interesting, I think, is that their definition goes way beyond just like the dark fantasy look or just saying, oh, it's hard. This is really about the required play style, the mental load, and ultimately how much patience the game demands.
Okay, let's get into it then. Before we hit the core idea, the author needed to set a baseline, right? So according to them, what are the absolute must-haves for a game to even be considered Souls-like?
Yeah, basically the foundation rests on two main things, and the author's really clear that both matter equally: the map and the bosses. They really believe the world design, the environment, is just as vital as the combat itself.
Hold on a sec. If the baseline is just a challenging map and challenging bosses, doesn't that describe almost any complex, well-made game? How does the author separate just general challenge from the specific Souls-like feel?
Okay, that's where the map criteria gets more specific. It's not just about a tough path. The map has to be carefully designed, to create this systemic risk and reward. We're talking big, interconnected worlds, often nonlinear, filled with traps, regular enemies, mobs, and this is crucial, really well-designed elite enemies. These elites aren't just roadblocks. They're there to actively drain your resources and test you before the boss.
Okay, so it's about resource management that's baked into the level design itself. Not just killing hard monsters, but how the journey wears you down.
Precisely. The source emphasizes that a good elite enemy isn't just a damage sponge you whack. They need specific counters, specific moves, forcing this kind of back and forth that makes you think hard about using your heals or items before you even get to the main event. The map itself forces you to assess risk constantly.
Right, that distinction makes a lot more sense for the genre's systemic risk versus just a linear gauntlet. So what about the second pillar, the bosses?
Well, challenging bosses are obviously key, yeah. But the author's also pretty critical here. They point that even in really good Souls-likes, often maybe less than a third of the bosses are genuinely well-designed. A lot of them rely on, cheap tricks or just repetition rather than being truly engaging. So the bar isn't just hard bosses. They have to be memorable, fair challenges that really demand you learn them.
Okay, so the author standard is pretty clear then. Map design that makes you manage scarcity, plus genuinely engaging boss fights. And applying that strict rule led them to say, Nioh 2 counts as a Souls-like.
Right.
But Black Myth, Wukong doesn't because the map itself was seen as too simple.
Exactly. The traversal, the environmental hazards, that's half the battle for this definition, not just the speed of the fights.
Which is a key point. And interestingly, the source initially did put the original Hollow Knight squarely in the Souls-like camp.
Yeah, they mentioned that after maybe 10 hours or so, it ticked all the boxes we just talked about, map, bosses, the whole deal. But this just sets the stage for the author's really personal, kind of unique test, the one that gets to the cognitive core of the genre for them.
Right. This is where we move from level design to player psychology. Before Silksong throws a wrench in things, we need to understand the author's own gaming habits. They love Souls-likes, finish loads of them, but they actively avoid games like Devil May Cry, those high-difficulty action games. Why? Why stay away from those?
Well, the reason seems to be feedback they got from others, that games like DMC demand pure, high-speed reflexes and complex execution. Skills they found, frankly, way more intimidating than the typical Souls-like challenge. And this whole perception shaped their personal benchmark for judging a game's mental demand, which leads us to what we're calling the audiobook test.
Okay, the audiobook test, this sounds interesting. How does listening to a book tell you anything about a game's genre?
It's pretty clever, actually. The author found that when playing most Souls-likes, they could have an audiobook playing in the background and follow it perfectly well. What that suggests is that the core difficulty in a true Souls-like, for them, relies on pattern recognition and endurance. It's not about lightning-fast, split-second reactions.
Ah, I see. So the player is spending time, maybe hours, just patiently learning the boss's moves, internalizing the timing, the sequence. The actual execution, while it needs doing, is forgiving enough that the main effort is mental, analytical, like learning a dance.
Exactly. Your brain can
Hmm.
handle a story from the book while your hands are doing these kind of ingrained, practiced movements. The difficulty is high, sure, but the pace respects your ability to learn and memorize. Once you've got the pattern down, victory feels inevitable, just a matter of time. It rewards patience, persistence. That allows the brain that space to multitask. That's the Souls-like promise, really. Mastery through patient learning.
Wow. Okay, so the ability to multitask becomes proof that the game is testing analysis over raw reflex. That's actually a brilliant way to frame it. It's like, you can listen to a lecture while knitting, maybe, but you definitely can't knit while trying to drive a Formula One car.
That's a perfect analogy, and that is precisely why the jump to Silksong felt so jarring for the author. That whole comfortable analytical approach, the very thing they enjoyed in the first Hollow Knight, it just shattered instantly when they ran into one particular enemy.
Right. The shift was really sudden. They bought Silksong, probably expecting more Hollow Knight, more of that slow burn learning, but then they hit this wall, a specific mini boss, the Skull Ant Scarguard.
Yep, Scarguard. This is where the theory really slams into practice. The fight with Scarguard felt completely different from how they usually approach Souls-like bosses. And the funny thing is, on paper, it sounds almost laughably simple. Scarguard apparently only uses 2 moves.
Wait, 2 moves? Seriously, in a sequel to Hollow Knight, that sounds like it should be super easy to learn the pattern for.
Theoretically, yes.
Yeah.
But the difficulty wasn't in how many moves there were to learn, it was the sheer speed needed to react. The attack animations, the timing to dodge and hit back it demanded incredibly fast, almost instant reactions. The window for error was tiny. And then, add to that, the fight apparently has a really low tolerance for mistakes. The player character, Hornet, dies in just 3 hits, so there's 0 room for error, basically. No time for that patient analysis. It became all about immediate, perfect execution, pure reflex.
And that's the moment, right? The direct clash with the established playstyle. They realized they couldn't listen to their audiobook anymore. Had to pause it because the game was demanding absolute, undivided attention, the kind they associated with those action games they usually avoided.
Exactly. The focus shifted completely from that patient pattern learning, the endurance method, to just raw, demanding reflexes.
So that inability to keep the audiobook going, that was the signal. That told the author the genre had shifted under their feet.
Pretty much. That was the light bulb moment. The conclusion they reached was that Hollow Knight, Silksong, even though it looks and feels a bit like a Souls-like, and maybe even meets the map criteria, it actually plays like a high-difficulty action game because it demands that intense, immediate reaction speed and punishes mistakes so harshly. It's kind of like it's wearing Souls-like clothes, but its heart beats like an action game. So if we kind of zoom out from this specific case, what it teaches us, I think, is that what really defines a genre isn't just the look or even just saying it's hard. It's about the type of cognitive challenge the game throws at you. Is it asking for patience and analysis, or is it demanding raw, fast reaction?
So for you listening, what's the takeaway here? Well, this deep dive really shows that genre lines can come down to tiny, almost technical details. Things like enemy attack frames, the reaction speed required, how much error the game allows. That's the real DNA of the challenge, maybe more than just, say, how many checkpoints there are.
Right. And maybe here's a final thought to chew on, something provocative. If the ability to multitask, like listening to that audiobook, is a decent test for whether something prioritizes pattern learning over pure reflex, what other parts of life, maybe learning a new skill or mastering a complex job, what else might we be misjudging based on the actual attention they demand versus what we think they demand? Something to consider the next time you find yourself trying to split your focus.